So, in this Clubhouse discussion, we debate and examine whether or not the DNC was holding candidates back. And it's a well known fact that they changed the rules in like the 25th hour, meaning just before you have Kennedy getting ready to get like his stuff finalized. This was done very intentionally. They also did several things to try to keep him off individual state ballots. For those who are denying this, this is why Kennedy ran as an independent, because Kennedy was a Democrat before this. Also, when Kennedy was running as an independent, they then put several legal challenges to keep him from being able to run. My two theories in this was that during the primary, that they did not want Kennedy out publicly calling out Biden for the terrible things like the evacuation of Afghanistan, when they were pulling out the last of the civilians and the troops. So I think that also too in the general election they were worried that coming into this that Kennedy would get certain percentages of the vote that could bend the election one way or another, which we know in some cases Kennedy was up like 5%. And in some of these states, 1 to 2% is going to potentially be make it or break it for this coming election. So as I've watched the different polling data and I've been following this very closely, the race is tightened, although Trump is still in the lead. But you would not know that from looking at the mainstream media's polling. So, that being said, please enjoy this Clubhouse discussion where we go back and forth, hardcore style, a lot of like slight interrupting. But in general, though, it was a pretty good conversation where I made a case. Thanks again, guys. Next one I was going to mention was the DNC making it hard for anybody to run against Biden in their primaries. And they pushed out, Mr. Kennedy, as we all know that. Um, you can see where, like, at the same time, they're criticizing other regimes for not having like a fair and open election. But there was a lot of push to make Biden the only person running. Like, I think he ran against virtually a guy like nobody knew of, and that was the supposed competition in the primary. I can't even
Which
think of the guy's
primary?
name. This past one, JJ, when he was getting the votes, you know that they did have like kind of a fictitious Democrat primary.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you
Where
look,
was that?
they were actually like doing like they had. That's why you hear them saying the millions and millions of people who voted to affirm Joe Biden as the presidential candidate this time. It's because of that fictitious kind of primary they had.
Why are you saying
It's like,
fictitious?
because I think that like a real primary is open to where you can have more people running,
You
but they
realize
do
that every incumbent goes through this same primary process. Like George Bush, when he ran for his second term, had the same type of primary. Would you also call that fictitious?
they don't all go through the same. Like, let me give you an example. Like, so
Oh
Trump's,
my God.
well, no, I'll give you an example. Like Trump's
We want to hear
primary,
this.
on Trump's primary for this year, when he
He's
was
not an
going through that.
incumbent.
Hold on. But I'm saying even before that, they still
Hmm.
had where people were actively allowed to run and campaign against him.
Right,
You
but I'm
did
talking about incumbent primaries. So like when Trump was running for his second term, there were are you saying that that was a fictitious primary?
no, because there was actually people who were trying to get
Who?
and run opposed.
Who?
The names are escaping me at the moment. It's been so long since that happened, but they just didn't have. They had like no support because typically you don't have
Same
support.
to the
But like
same for the guy who's running against Biden in those
in this
primaries.
particular in this particular case, we know that like the DNC is actively engaged in lawsuits that would keep Kennedy from running, or was trying to keep Kennedy from getting on certain ballots. Um, they actively blocked him from running against Biden in like a Democrat primary. Like, all this is stuff that It's just factual.
Could you provide any of those facts?
Yeah, let me try to find you one of the detailed articles.
Are you just talking about like super delegates or what?
No, if you look at like Kennedy actually wanted to not run as an independent. He wanted to run in the primary and he wanted to run against Biden, but they blocked him from doing so. I don't know why,
Why?
because I don't know that Kennedy would have
How do
gotten
you?
more votes than
I mean,
Biden. The only thing I can think of is that they knew that Biden was having cognitive decline, and they didn't really want Biden having to compete with somebody because Kennedy is pretty sharp on his feet. Let me try to find this.
I'm.
Again, this is every incumbent election. The person or persons running against the incumbent are kind of not, nobody votes for them. They don't get any support. There's no, and you don't call any of those fictitious. I'm not understanding how this is any different.
I think you make a good
Yeah,
point,
I'm pretty
Jane. Like,
sure.
it's pretty normal that like the incumbent, they'll just do they kind of go through the motions, but nobody really votes for the whether that if there was a Republican incumbent, that would be the same sort of thing going on.
That's
I
right.
agree with you, Jane.
Yeah, I think if you're not already in the party, like say you want to run in the Democratic Party and you're not a Democrat, all you have to do is get the signatures to get on the ballot. That's it.
So I'm trying to find the one that goes into the primary. The other ones that I've got, which I can send to this phone and send to you, are like the CBS News article where they Democrats and their allies sue to keep RFK Jr. off of ballots.
What
For what
ballots?
reason?
Which
For what
ballots?
reason?
Ballots for primaries or ballots for
Well, that's what I was. That's what I
or the
was.
election?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm giving this part because that's what I got to easier. I didn't know if Jane wanted those before I looked for more of the primary stuff, but that's currently what they were
But are
doing.
you providing for stuff to keep him off state ballots for the election, for the presidential election, or for the primary?
Well, I'm saying both, but I didn't know if Jane wanted the first article
Which the
that
first
talks
one
about.
is about what? Jesus.
Well, the first one is about the actual presidential election where
Okay,
he's an
thank you.
independent. I didn't know if
Well, we're
Jane wanted that one as I'm trying to get the other ones, or if she was just fine without having that one.
that's a completely different issue.
No, I want the primary one, please. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm just colloquially aware, and knowing that I agree with you guys, Jane, I am somewhat aware. I've heard that there were some states that kind of did some shenanigans and didn't allow Kennedy to get on the primary ballot. But it didn't really matter at the end of the day because he wasn't going to win the Democratic primary. Like, he wasn't going to beat the incumbent, and nobody ever does. So it probably would have been better for them to leave him on the ballot and Kennedy get 1% of the vote and lose anyway, probably just to be from a a fairness standpoint. But that's kind of what I remember of it.
I'd just like to know what the reason was that the Democrats said, in their argument to keep him off. Like, I don't
Yeah,
understand.
it'd be interesting. I think
I
there was a lot of people that were, from my understanding, that I mean, just it was kind of there was some the biggest criticism was is that they changed the rules at the last minute in order to keep him off the ballot, and there was like a change,
yeah.
and they were kind of a little bit upset that like, why are you changing the rules like 10 minutes before we're supposed to do this? And that was the criticism. But like I said, I don't think it would be a material anyways, because he wouldn't have won the Democratic primary. There's no way he would have.
So I think that the reason why they did that, this is my personal opinion. I don't have anything to substantiate it other than that. I think that they saw what we were all seeing, Biden's cognitive decline. And I think that they were worried that if he had to get into any kind of primary debate or something with challengers, that it
The
would might go
incumbents
like the
don't
Trump
do
debate did.
debates.
They,
Trump
do you,
Trump didn't debate anybody in 2020 for that. None of the primary people none of the incumbents debate anybody.
Well, typically they don't have to because normally everybody supports them. But what I'm
You just
talking about in
said
this particular
no,
case
because
is,
I said that, right? That was my argument, and you said no, 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 no. Normally, an incumbent does have people going against them in the primaries.
well, no, what I'm saying is, so let me clarify. What I'm saying is that, like, the changing of the rules to keep Kennedy from running, like, if typically everybody ends up going for the incumbent anyway, then the shenanigans of keeping him from running or keeping him from doing this was bad optics. They shouldn't have done it.
Well,
And
you
let
Right,
say
me
but what
bad
you
explain.
but you
optics.
said but you said they did that to prevent him from looking like a fool in a primary debate. And what I'm telling you is the incumbents don't debate primary opponents.
Well, you know what I'm saying is that if he would have been like, let's say they're doing the primaries, let's say you have this thing where they actually open it up. Kennedy was on all the primary ballots against Joe Biden. Kennedy is actively campaigning, calling Biden out for a debate. If you have a scenario where, let's say, Kennedy won Iowa and then Kennedy won like another one, well, now you have a problem because there's actual voters who are voting for this person who's not the incumbent, and he's calling the president out for a debate. At that particular point, the sitting president could either pretend like he doesn't have to debate, but obviously he should because he's getting his butt kicked in the optics.
James, who do you think is eligible to run as a Democrat for the Democratic Party?
So, so one, you have to be a Democrat. That's for
Uh
starters.
huh. But who
Which Kennedy
decides who can
was.
run?
So you have to get like a certain number um of votes or like
I think
written
he's
kind of
actually,
support.
James, really quick. I think he's actually going to make a bigger point here.
Let
His
him,
point
let him,
is
let him go.
okay. I'll let him
Well,
go.
what's well
There's a
what
further point. He's trying to get you to get down the line. At the end of the day, who decides who can run as a Democrat?
well yeah, we're agreeing it's the Democrat Party.
Oh, well, who makes that decision among the Democratic Party?
Usually the upper half.
Right. The same people who decide for the Republican Party, right?
No, because
No,
The Democrat Party makes up its
I'm
own
sorry.
role.
I'm sorry. The people, well, you know who? I'll just tell you. I'll tell you the answer. The people who decide who can run as a Republican are the members of the Republican National Committee of the
Yeah, but
Republican
you just
Party.
said it was. You just claimed it was the same as the DNC.
Not the
Well,
exact
Let me
he
same
tell
just
you what
people.
it's
It's
misspoke.
the
He
not.
didn't mean
same.
it that way.
It's this. I didn't misspeak. It's just the same. It's the same method. They have their own committee who decides who can run as a Republican, just
Yes,
as the Democrats decide who can run as a Democrat.
yes.
Now, are you aware that the Republican National Committee decided who could run against Donald Trump
Yeah, they had criteria, but you're not
as an
addressing my.
incumbent?
But you're not addressing my point. And
Which
Tim,
point?
even Tim was sharing that with you guys as well. They changed something like right before it to make it virtually impossible for Kennedy to actually like enter into the primary. They did that to keep him out.
Well, what did the Republican National Committee do to keep anybody from running against Trump?
I mean, anybody could. I just don't think he had anybody who was actually, pushing to run. I know that they didn't change any of the rules the last minute. They were pretty consistent. The same thing for who could run before. It's just it seems like the Democrats had some shenanigans, but they've always had some shenanigans, JJ, because they have super delegates. And so in the event that the people make what they believe is a bad decision, the super delegates can override all the other people's votes and they can actually select a candidate. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And who decides? Who governs the primaries?
Well, that's not in dispute.
Okay. Well, unless you have something you can provide that was any different that the Democrats did that was any different than Republicans have done. This is
Yeah.
just
Yeah, I told you, like, if you look at, like, even the Republican field, they usually leave it, like, wide open. They welcome many candidates. It's why, like, you have in some cases early on the absurd stages where, like, 8 or 9 people are, like, standing there.
Not
Like,
in an
against
incumbent. Not against
against
an incumbent.
a well. Ask him. Do you mean against an incumbent, James?
well, no, I'm saying that if you had somebody
No, you're
who,
not talking about against an incumbent.
no, it
Because if
is,
you're not,
can,
then it's
no, no,
irrelevant.
no, no, I'm saying the same thing can happen against an incumbent. And there's just typically not that kind of support, like, for
Oh
somebody
my
who's not an
God.
incumbent. In this particular case, Kennedy, with his name value and the different policies that he wants to enact, he had support. He has support. They
His
just made
name
it.
value,
Yeah, the name Kennedy has a lot of value in the Democrat Party.
not when
Even
it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
I think even in Biden's office, there's like a Kennedy behind him.
What? What does that have to do with anything?
I'm saying that, like, you have this person and they're blocking him from doing it. And I think my theory is because I don't think they wanted Biden to have any competition and that Biden couldn't handle competition.
Well, that's an interesting theory you have with no
Because
evidence.
because
Did
also
Trump
too,
did Trump debate Bill Weld? He was Bill Weld was the only person who primaried him in 2020. Did he have a debate with him?
no, but let's say Bill Weld would
No.
have no, hold on, but let's say Bill Weld had support and he would have won like Iowa,
Support
Yeah,
by
do
whom?
you who do
then
you how
then
do you possibly think that
then
Kennedy
Trump
could
would
have
have.
won Iowa? You're in a fantasy land if you think Kennedy could have won Iowa.
I'm saying that you have them changing a rule just before that
What
made it
rule?
virtually impossible. I'm trying to find the. Hey Tim,
Okay. Well, we'll
do you
wait.
have Tim? Do you have that
I don't know.
article handy?
I don't
Tim,
know.
don't
No, no.
bail him out. This is his
This isn't
own
my
claim.
fight.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. I'm
Well,
just saying.
Tim.
Like I was just trying to be honest about some things that I remembered, but I don't have. It's just like out of my memory. So I apologize.
Well,
I'm
Tim.
not able
Tim
to help
has.
much.
Tim remembers the same thing that I'm remembering. That they made adjustments virtually before to keep him out.
Well, all right. It's a simple Google, but maybe not if you're on a phone.
But also, I'm not making like claims that, hey, they definitely did this because of Biden's cognitive decline. I've been very
No,
clear
my
that's my
issue
opinion.
was that you kept calling it a fictitious primary. That's when you're not calling any of the other incumbent primaries fictitious.
Well, I think that why I'm calling that fictitious is that the changing of the rules in virtually the 25th hour. Like I don't think that that
You didn't
is.
bring that up until Tim did.
No, that's what I mentioned, that they made rules and they actually blocked Kennedy from running. And then Tim came along and he was just backing up and clarifying.
You said that they didn't allow that you said that it didn't count as a primary because he didn't have anybody running against him.
Well, no, I said that, like, it wasn't like a real primary because
Right.
they didn't actually they didn't actually like allow challengers.
I don't understand what you're talking about.
If if it would have been if it would have been a real open primary, then they wouldn't have blocked Kennedy. Kennedy would have ran, probably not beaten Biden. We can agree because majority of time people back up the incumbent. That's just the way it is. But by doing that and playing those shenanigans, they have poor optics. It would have been better just to let him run and not do that. But my theory is that I think that he would have been calling into question Biden's policy. He would have been calling into question the Afghanistan evacuation. There would have been a lot of things that the Biden administration did not want for criticism.
Speculation, hearsay.
It is speculation, JJ, because I can't like get in their heads, but I just know that the DNC with having super delegates is ridiculous anyway.
Was Kennedy a Democrat anyway, JJ?
He
Yeah.
was a Democrat, yes.
He was.
Yeah, he was a Democrat for, I believe, majority of his time. Like, there's actually another Democrat, I think Kelsey Gabbard, who just came out and supported Trump. There's actually a few more Democrats that are going to come out that are calling, like I said, shenanigans on the Biden administration.
Well, she's kind of a dunce, like the Alaska chick, and Marjorie Taylor Greene.
There's also like a lot of issue that people are having with them saying that it was grassroots for getting Kamala Harris the nomination, and people just don't buy that. Like, they know it was just she was handed this. Thank you again for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Also, I will have a few more of these out soon. Once again, thank you, and I appreciate each and every single one of you. Until next time, take care of each other, guys. Claim they like riding, but I know that they ain't. Ride or die. I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint. Ride or die.